It's an absolutely wild day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards of the Coast has just dropped a ban hammer, and they have dropped it hard, hitting a bunch of key cards in really big formats. And on top of that, they've also changed how they're going to handle bannings going forwards.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered to discuss the brand new banned and restricted announcement for December 4th that Wizards of the Coast has just released. And man, this is a big announcement. Unlike the previous one we saw, which was literally just an advertisement for play boosters, this one is causing major shakeups in multiple formats. And on top of that, they're actually changing how they're going to handle bannings again surrounding Standard. So let's start out with that. I'm going to be reading parts of the official announcement. Parts of it I'm going to skim over, and I'm actually going to take another announcement about bannings over in the Pauper format and combine it in with this as well. So we're just going to wrap it all into one mega banning video hitting all these different formats. So let's start out talking about Standard because this is genuinely interesting. Wizards had said, we'd like to provide a bit of clarity to our announcement dates and windows. Going forwards, we'll be operating with a slightly more flexible announcement cadence. Future banned and restricted announcements will occur 2 to 5 weeks after each set's release. So before, they were giving us exactly 3 weeks. And now they're going, you know what, actually, we need a little more wiggle room. We're going to go 2 to 5, which I think it's smart. What they're trying to do is they're trying to build confidence in, hey, we're not actually going to cause bans to happen on a frequent basis, so you can go ahead and get your cards, play, have a good time. The format's not going to change. Your decks are going to be reliable. So they want you to know when the bannings are going to happen, and they're going to try and do them as infrequently as possible, which, let's be real, it's going to be challenging because they basically were designing under different strategies before, and now they're back to focusing on actually trying to balance the formats, but the card design and stuff they printed still going to take another year to catch up. So they probably realized, you know, some of these cards are going to cause problems. Anyhow, they're changing it to 2 to 5 weeks after each set release, and it says, this will allow us to capture data from large events like Pro Tours, while ensuring we make changes before the next set begins previewing. We want to establish a clear picture of each format before you start evaluating and collecting cards from the next set. Now it's crazy when you actually hear that. You go, well, yeah, that feels obvious. And that's actually how it felt in the past. But because Wizards has created so many more products and they're constantly blasting stuff at us, they don't have the time to keep on top of what they're doing. So they're just making a billion different products instead of balancing things, right? So now it says, so we have a window following each main set release. It's still our goal that most and or all changes to Standard happen once per year during the fall banned and restricted window that's associated with the new 3-year Standard rotation. That's a pretty idealistic view, right? Standard has always been a 2-year rotation, and Wizards of the Coast had a difficult time managing that. And now it's a 3-year rotation where we have a lot more power creep introduced into the game. So I am skeptical as to how well they're going to be able to manage this. It'll be curious to see what happens going forwards. It says, changes to Pioneer, Modern, Legacy, and Vintage can happen during any main set release window. The next window is in 2024, around March 11th, following the release of Murders at Karloff Manor. So we're not going to be seeing any more ban action until then, unless there's some absolute emergency where some card slid through the cracks. So Standard is the first format that's covered in here. Basically, they say they're happy with the state of the format since they took action back in May. They're saying it's it's evolved, incorporating cards from Ixalan and Eldraine, and they basically view it as healthy when it has the different archetypes being represented. So they want to see aggro, mid-range, control, and combo. And so they say that basically Standard, now that it's grown to incorporate 10 sets, is showing all of this in different ways. They're saying that Standard is balanced and giving I'm not going to list all the different deck types they have for the different categories, but they're saying that it's all in there. Personally, I don't consider Standard to be all that balanced, but what are you going to do? Wizards of the Coast clearly feels like it is. Let's move on to where the real action is happening, and that is in Pioneer and Modern. So we'll start out with Pioneer. This is where we're getting multiple bans. The first ban, as I mentioned would happen in the previous video we talked about this, is Karn the Great Creator. No big surprise there, right? It's absolutely a powerhouse card. They're also banning from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, Geological Appraiser. So they go on to explain, we want Pioneer to provide as diverse an experience as is possible. There's some really interesting language in here. It's a place where you can have fun using cards from past Standard environments without content being printed directly into it or having content naturally rotate out of it. It's our largest format that gets its content solely through the Standard pipeline. Now, I want to take a minute to just talk about the way they've worded this, because as I read the word content over and over, first of all, it's a very homogenous term that we use. I mean, what I have right here, you would call this content instead of a video, right? But I think it's interesting because Wizards picks their words particularly. So they talk about you can have fun using cards from past Standard environments, but then they change from saying cards. Like, I'll read it to you again with the word cards in the phrasing instead. It's a place where you can have fun using cards from past Standard environments without cards being printed directly into it or having cards naturally rotate out of it. It's like the things that they're calling negatives, like, oh, having things printed directly into it, you might not like that. Having stuff rotate out of it, you might not like that. That's what we do with content. Fun is what we do with cards. And that, to me, is an interesting little tweak. On top of that, it's them acknowledging that going ahead and having rotating formats where you basically, by printing stuff into it, isn't what everybody's looking for. That's what Modern was at one time. You guys know that, right? Pioneer was basically created as a knee-jerk reaction going, hey, Wizards is now printing stuff directly into Modern, and they're forcing rotation into Modern, so why don't we have some kind of side format? And then Wizards went, okay, we got to channel this energy into something. Why don't we create Pioneer, and also we'll have this Explorer thing on Arena, because they did it. They did the dirty maneuverings all at the same time, right? They went, okay, so Modern's gonna have stuff printed directly into it now. How you like me now? And on top of that, we're gonna go ahead and go, you know that format Historic on Arena where you could actually just have your non-rotating whatever? Well, guess what? Alchemy's in it, and now it's a rotating format because Wizards desperately doesn't want us to have a non-rotating format. So they grudgingly create Pioneer, and I'm just going out on a limb. It's a very thick limb. This is the thickest limb on the tree that I'm going out on here, saying that eventually Wizards' plan is to print directly into Pioneer the same way. It's just building a new grounds like Modern was to reap the harvest from in future years. So right now they're all like, yeah, you know, Pioneer doesn't have no rotations and we don't print anything directly into it. But in the future, I fully expect that they will. And this is acknowledgement that they clearly know that people care about that sort of thing. Switching the words around to content, I love it. I love it. Anyways, as a large format, generally only the most powerful or synergistic of cards printed through Standard will find a home here. And since it's a format full of powerful cards, proper caretaking is required to ensure it stays as fun as possible. This sentence, I'm going to say it again. Since it's a format full of powerful cards, proper caretaking is required to ensure it stays fun as possible. The last time we took action on the format was in June of 2022, about a year and a half ago. The plan is to return to a more active role in managing Pioneer. Interesting how they said proper caretaking is required to make sure that it remains fun, and then go, we have been ignoring this for like a year and a half, but we swear we're here to take care of it now. Everything's good. It's pure absurdity the way they just go, oh, Pioneer's like, you want a non-rotating format where we don't print stuff into it? Pioneer. Also, we're just going to ignore Pioneer. We don't care if it's a dumpster fire because we actually want you to be in the formats we're printing stuff directly into, right? So the whole thing that goes on with these guys. Anyways, it says, during the year after its creation, changes to Pioneer were frequent, sometimes with multiple changes in a single month. It was almost like it was a slapdash last-second decision, almost like making Standard 3 years. Wizards of the Coast makes their decisions the same way I make my decisions dealing with my wife. She comes up to me and says something, and I just blurt out whatever I think will make her happy in the moment, and then go, oh no, how am I going to execute this? What was I thinking? Like, I genuinely feel like that's how Wizards of the Coast operates. It's a terrible way of doing things. We'll do this. Oh, it's just, okay, how about this? Like, it's so random. So, moving forward, we'll actively be using our main set release banned and restricted announcement cadence to better take care of Pioneer. Believe it when I see it. Okay, so even though the metagame share and win rate of mono-green Nykthos decks have been within a reasonable range, the deck has simply been a large component of the Pioneer metagame for most of the format's lifetime. With Karn capable of finding threats and solutions to whatever the deck encounters, it can be quite difficult to go over the top with this strategy. The whole fact that they're like, yeah, we haven't been paying attention to this format. We did kind of notice, though, that Karn's been, there the whole time. So, man, maybe we should do something about that. So, when you run into Karn, it can be quite difficult to go over the top. This causes the metagame to either try to go underneath it or try to ignore what it's doing with their own combo strategy, effectively bending the metagame due to its existence. The consistency and strength of the deck also makes it very difficult for various types of fair mid-range strategies to exist. Yeah, surprise! Karn's range is so broad, it can facilitate convoluted infinite combos that make the format less approachable. Exactly, that's what I talked about in my last video, where I said the combos used with Karn are so wonky that if I was to try and explain them to you in a video, you'd just go, oh. But if you saw it on the table in action, you get it out. Okay, I see what you're doing. I follow the chain, but it's just... It's ridiculous. So, he definitely does facilitate convoluted infinite combos that make the format less approachable. This is supposed to be modern mini, right? At little to no opportunity cost. Additionally, Karn's ability to naturally suppress artifacts is likely keeping a spread of interesting cards from being played. Really? Really? While it's recently been on the decline in terms of metagame share, it's clear that the deck has had a warping effect on the metagame for too long. And for these reasons, Karn, the great creator, is back. Daddy's back from having smokes and he realized that things have been terrible. He's going to fix things. Get out of here, Karn. Oh, it's so funny. All right, next up, the introduction of Lost Caverns of Ixalan brought new toys to the format. The Discover mechanic featured on cards such as Geological Appraiser, Trumpeting Carnosaur, and Quintorius has given rise to brand new strategies that don't play any other cards naturally costing 4 or less, aside from cloning effects. Maybe if Wizards did a modicum of playtesting. When left undisturbed, these decks can either produce enough creatures to win via combat, or enough Quintorius triggers to deal lethal damage to an opponent directly. Being able to win a game on the spot on turn 3 with Geological Appraiser after creating a single treasure token puts a bit too much pressure on this is amazing. This sentence is amazing. Being able to win the game on the spot on turn 3 with Geological Appraiser after creating a single treasure token puts a bit too much pressure on folks to be a good thing for the long-term health of the format. Just a bit. Being able to win on the 3rd turn after creating just 1 treasure token is only a bit of too much pressure for Pioneer. Pioneer's the step between standard and modern. What is going on? The language is amazing. So, while it's not clear this is the strongest thing to be doing in Pioneer, without some form of interaction, players can lose the game as early as their own 2nd turn. This doesn't meet our long-term vision for the format, where players can enjoy a variety of macro strategies before losing the game so early. When I read this, honestly, I go, wait, is this saying, when you read players can enjoy a variety of macro strategies before losing the game so early, does that mean you still want the games to end so quickly, you just want people to be able to do a few more things? It's so confusing. And it says, if every deck must run 1 or 2 mana interaction spells, the format shrinks. For these reasons, Geological Appraiser is banned. This card just came out in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And it's already like, yo, I'm a big problem. This is wild to me. Also, we're going to have a problem going forwards with way more powerful 1 and 2 mana spells. And you know what? We'll get into that actually when we get to the popper part of the discussion. I don't want to get too sidetracked now. So, Geological Appraiser, shrinking the format, gets it banned. They're talking about keeping their eye on Quintorius because he can win as early as turn 4 after resolving solely its namesake card. All you have to do is put on Quintorius and you can win. They don't even test anything. Oh, okay. All right. So, it's pure absurdity. Now, they are doing an unbanning, and it was my #1 choice for what will get unbanned. That is Smuggler's Copter. So, for unbanning Smuggler's Copter, it says, we banned this card back in December 2019. Since then, many new sets have entered the format, and as such, the format has naturally grown in power over time. While unbanning is not something we do very often, we believe the format can absorb it successfully. Reintroducing it will create new deck-building puzzles and provide additional diversity. So, I mean, like, it's pretty funny how they say, yo, we made this in 2019 when it was too strong, but it's 4 years later, and we have pulled the power level so hardcore that Smuggler's Copter's probably just going to get lost in the mix. Maybe people use it, maybe not. It's amazing. It's amazing. Now, friends, let's turn to Modern. So, for Modern, we've got 2 bannings. Fury, which, I mean, everybody and their mother knew Fury was getting banned. And Up the Beanstalk is getting hosed too. Probably because Wizards didn't want to hit another big, juicy, delicious card to stop the shenanigans. Because Up the Beanstalk is a really solid card, but without all the free spells around it, it's not nearly as spicy, right? So, when we last spoke about Modern in August, Wizards was most concerned about new cards from Lord of the Rings, namely Orcish Bowmasters and the One Ring. While these cards are powerful players in the metagame, another card has continued to suppress what's possible in the format even more. That's another one I love. I want to go over that again. While these cards are powerful players, another card has continued to suppress what's possible in the format even more. This is direct acknowledgement that both Orcish Bowmasters and the One Ring totally suppress Modern, are absolute problems, but Wizards is going, look man, Modern Horizons 3, like, it's coming. Modern Horizons 2, we're done with that. We're wrapping that up. So we're going to ban a card from Modern Horizons 2. What, like, every ban announcement lately, all of them have mentioned Bowmasters and the One Ring, and all just been, hey, we're looking at them. We know they're a problem, guys. Totally. We're not going to do anything about it because we're still selling them. But if we just keep mentioning them to you over and over, you'll feel like we're actually going to do something. So for me, them mentioning that it's wild. They need to bring it up and be like, yeah, they suppress the format, but Fury does more. So what's going to happen when we get rid of Fury and these cards start suppressing the format in a more obvious manner? Well, we'll wait until the very end of the product's life cycle to ban them too. Let's be real. That's how Wizards does things, even if they say that they don't. It like, this screams that. So, Fury, most often played as a 4/4 double striker that clears the opponent's board, makes playing with creature decks nearly impossible, and Wizards knew this when they made the card. You have to understand that. Wizards knew this when they made it. They've been making cards for 30 years. They didn't somehow not know that making a free cost, oh look, I can get this guy out and at the same time smoke your guys and have a big body on the board, like, they knew what they were making. So, also, they call it Rakdos Evoke. It's Rakdos Scam. That's what we're calling it. Rakdos Scam has only risen in metagame share since the Modern Pro Tour this summer, and coming in right behind it is 4-color Omnath, also featuring Fury. Played in a smattering of other decks as well. Fury is keeping several diverse and interesting strategies at bay. Really? So, it's banned. Removing it will impact both the play rate and win rate of Rakdos Scam. Players are currently using 4 or more copies of Undying effects, like Not Dead After All, to rebuy Grief or Fury. Without Fury, the opportunity cost of playing so many Undying effect increases, reducing consistency in the deck and becoming a real cost to include. It is possible these decks begin to transform into white versions that utilize Solitude and or Ephemerate. However, a rebought Solitude is not as threatening as a 4/4 with Double Strike and provides the deck less coverage against the metagame. Like, Fury is just, it's one of those cards that's clearly meant to run straight into Modern and force you to play with it, the same way Ragavan was. We believe the removal of Fury will widen the format, allowing players to explore additional strategies, especially with low toughness creatures. Finally, fewer overall Rakdos Scam decks in the metagame will also likely reduce the total number of Grief and Orcish Bowmasters players will encounter. Oh yeah, Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure we'll see less people playing Bowmasters as it becomes one of the more powerful cards in the format. You've literally talked about it suppressing the format. And it's an incredibly efficient card where they're talking about fundamentally changing card design going forward to make more creatures with 2 toughness because Bowmaster exists. But yeah, let's all pretend like the bad boogeyman's just gonna go away. It's so silly. So, Up the Beanstalk is one of Modern's newest inclusions, subsidizing many cards in the format that cost 5 or more mana. However, it is rare for a player to pay anywhere close to 5 mana to cast the cards using with Up the Beanstalk. It's almost like Wizards has made playing Magic free and all the spells cost nothing. While removing Fury from the format will certainly impact the usage of Up the Beanstalk, we don't believe that to be enough. It's remarkably difficult to interact with the 2-mana enchantment profitably, as the card replaces itself immediately, with players often playing a free spell on the same turn since they get such a great return on the deal. Up the Beanstalk is a card that doesn't feel broken when you're playing it in something like Standard, where it doesn't have a bunch of cheap, cheaty-out nonsense. But obviously in formats like this, it becomes incredibly powerful. So, it says it's particularly telling when players have concluded that cascading into Up the Beanstalk is more advantageous than 0 mana options like Crashing Footfalls and Living End. For these reasons, Up the Beanstalk is banned in Modern. And I mean, even if they didn't ban it now because they had banned other cards, it would get hit too, right? So, for things like Legacy, they're saying overall they like the way things are. It's a powerful format. Some cards have made inroads like Orcish Bowmasters, but there's Beseech the Mirror. Same kind of things going on with Vintage. One Ring, Orcish Bowmasters, Beseech the Mirror. They're making it to those formats. Those formats have the most powerful stuff in them, right? So these powerhouse cards popping in there is just a testament to the crazy power scope of what Wizards is making now. They're making insanely powerful cards that are so strong that the oldest formats that have the biggest daddy powerhouse cards go, yo, come hang out with me, bro, right? So that's fine. Honestly, when it comes to Legacy and Vintage, having the most hands-off approach, it has those have the smallest player bases, and they tend to be happy with what they have, and they want crazy power. That's the point, is you're playing with the most insane nonsense. So having a higher power scope over there absolutely makes sense. Now, the last format we're going to talk about is Pauper. Pauper is banning Monastery Swiftspear. So that's because Mono Red is a dominant force in Pauper right now, and Monastery Swiftspear is just too much of a give me in terms of the value you get out of it, right? Like, it's way too easy to pump it with its prowess. There's a ton of cheese little red spells in terms of either burn or card draw that will let you boost it up, and then on top of that, you're refilling your hand up, ready to go just with more gas. Plus, it with the prowess triggers, it moves the toughness up 2, 3, 4. Like, it starts at 2, but you go to 3, you go to 4, and it's even harder to get rid of the Swiftspear. So they're trying to basically tone down the power overall of the mono red deck, and the Swiftspear seems like a reasonable target overall. Pauper is a format that has its own council now, the same way that Commander does. So it's kind of like Wizards can wipe their hands of it and go, we're not handling that format. And it's lucky for them because, I mean, first of all, they don't really want to deal with the format. That's not where the money is. But secondly, things are going to get way uglier for Pauper starting next year with Markov Mana, right? The play boosters fundamentally change how Magic is being sold. The booster packs are still going to be used for draft, but they're like set boosters now, okay? And that means you can get 2, 3, 4 rares in the pack. What does that mean? It means when the packs are used for limited, and understand, limited is a big deal to Wizards. They know it makes the money. It's why play boosters were created. That's why we're moving to this product specifically so that Wizards can capitalize on limited sealed play where you use just what's in the boosters and you're not sitting there building your own decks out of all this other stuff. So what happens in draft now, Norb Drafter Sealed, is use the stuff in your packs, and before you'd have a certain power level. But now 2, 3, 4 rares per pack, it ups that power level considerably. Also, with Wizards decreasing the number of cards in the packs, we're getting less commons per set, which means the commons have to be more impactful and they have to be effective and limited. So we're going to have an environment where you're going to have more powerhouse rares showing up, which means you need more powerful commons and uncommons to handle those more powerful rares, and they need to show up with higher frequency. And Wizards of the Coast has indicated that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to get more powerful commons and uncommons going forward. So you're just to be able to answer this more powerful rare situation. So remember earlier in the video where we talked about formats that require that you run 1 and 2 mana interaction and they get smaller and smaller, faster and faster, tighter and tighter. That's a problem. Well, that is going to be exacerbated by the play boosters, because we're now going to have fewer commons and they have to be stronger to handle bigger threats, which will necessitate, as the answers get stronger, the threats have to get stronger to respond to it. So it's a cycle that accelerates the power creep in Magic. So Pauper is going to have a very difficult time going forwards as more and more powerhouse commons show up in an attempt to combat the power of the rares that are in the limited environment, because limited is too much of a cash cow for Wizards to not design around it. It is an absolutely fascinating time to be a Magic historian, let me tell you. The long-term view of the game, seeing how things were, seeing what it's changed into, I never could have predicted it. Anyhow, that wraps up everything I have to say in terms of the bans. I'll be doing a live stream over on my other channel tonight if you want to come by and talk about them, or whatever. It's just going to be a regular old chill stream. I'll see you there, my friends. In the meantime, big thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel. You guys rule, and I will see you all for the next video.